guys, welcome to our Making Connections lesson that ties in with Turtle in Paradise. Okay, so we already heard Turtle talk about milk toast. They reference it a couple times. It's what she feeds to Nana Philly. So what milk toast is, it can be as simple as what Turtle did, where she just has toast or bread and you pour milk over it. You could also have it with butter, with flour, with salt. Some people would add other things like nutmeg or something else to it to kind of spice it up, but that's only if you even had it. You might not. Okay, so coffee soup. This is something that so far has not been mentioned in the book. I'm not sure if it will or not, but this is something I witnessed my own grandfather have for breakfast every single morning while I was growing up. Because that's what he ate while he was growing up in the Great Depression. So coffee soup was stale crackers or dry bread. His was always bread that he tore up into chunks with sugar, coffee, and milk poured on top. You let that soak so it gets all mushy. And the idea there was that way you could still use your stale crackers and your dry bread that was past being usable because it was no longer soft. So you would let it soak up that milk and coffee to soften it. So then you could still eat it and it wouldn't go to waste. So yeah, my grandpa had that every single morning. For him, it became comfort food, I guess you could say, because that's what he grew up with. And to him, it was delicious. Okay. Oops. Oh, I went too far. So if your coffee was too expensive, my grandfather did this, and it was very popular in the South. If your coffee was too expensive, you used chicory. So you can see that picture on the left. It kind of looks like a carrot, but it's actually a flowering plant, and that root can be used, can be ground up and put into coffee. It's actually been used since ancient Egypt. The French began using it in the 1800s, and it became popular in the U.S. in times of economic downfall or struggle, such as the Great Depression, where coffee was maybe a little harder to come by, it was more expensive, and it is still popular today, especially in the South, and most notably in New Orleans. That's where you're going to find chicory coffee the most. And real quick, I actually have some. I got this on one of my trips to New Orleans. This is the most famous brand in New Orleans from Café du Monde. It's so popular, you can find it in airports, you can find it in stores. You don't have to go to Café du Monde. This one happens to be from Café du Monde, but it's everywhere. So it looks like this or something like it, and coffee and chicory. So, yeah. Okay, let me go back to small screen. So I did take a picture of the inside of my coffee can, and that's this right here. So it's just that ground up, dried out root that you put in your coffee to make your coffee last longer and go a little bit further. All right, so when we were reading the book a couple chapters back, it mentions Guava Duck, and I personally was like, okay, what is Guava Duck? That's not something I've heard of. And it turns out, so I looked it up, Guava Duck comes from Cuba in the Bahamas. It's very sweet. It can be eaten as a dessert, though many Key West natives eat it as a side dish. So I have a picture here of guavas, and then I have a picture on the right of what guava duck actually looks like, and it seems to be kind of like a cake roll, but also with sauce poured over top. I don't know. I'm actually considering maybe trying it. I found a recipe. I'll post it for you, but I was looking at maybe trying to make it myself. All right, so they also mention bread lines. I know Turtle mentions the bread lines at least once. So in the Great Depression, with the nation in financial crisis, families were unable to scrape up enough money to buy food. They literally didn't know where the next meal was coming from. They didn't know how to feed their children or themselves. So bread lines and soup kitchens were started by charities. Lines would stretch for blocks with people waiting, and for many people, this was their only source of food. So when she refers to bread lines, that's what it was. You can see in this picture down here, down in the bottom, that this gentleman's getting a box of food, and then you'd keep going. But that had to last you for a while. When it was like that picture down there, that had to last you for a while. Okay. In addition to that, there were shantytowns or Hoovervilles, so called Hoovervilles after the president of this time. These were pretty sad. Many people became homeless. Homelessness increased significantly in the 1930s. And shantytowns were typically established on the outskirts of cities, and they would also be found frequently near the soup kitchens. So people would scrape together whatever they could to live in, and you would find entire families in these little shanties or in these little shacks. Some nicer than others, sometimes multiple families living all in one. Clearly not what you would want to live in, but it's better than nothing, and at least you would have people around you and be close to some source of food and have shelter. All right, so Terry the Pirates. Turtle references this quite a few times. It was one of her favorites. It was an actual comic strip. It ran from 1934 to 1973 in newspapers. So where we would, watch TV or get on the internet or something, like I mentioned in a previous lesson, they didn't have that. So they would listen to those radio shows and they would read the newspaper, the funny pages as they called them. So I looked it up, and Terry and his best friend Pat went on all kinds of adventures and fought pirates, and they began their adventures in China. So that might make a little bit more sense. I think it's chapter 12 when Turtle is asking about China. So that would be why she's asking about China. Okay, so Turtle also mentions earlier in the book how she and her mom found this kit that they want to buy to build a house. They found it in the Sears Roebuck catalog, and many of you probably had no idea what I was talking about. But during the Great Depression and in the years surrounding it, Sears and Roebuck, now it's called Sears, they would put out a catalog, and they actually had a whole home construction department, and they would sell you kits to build your own house. So you would get the lumber, you would get all the hardware, everything would come with it, and it had a very comprehensive instruction manual, and you would build your own house. So they were looking at a house that's very similar to this. I'll show it to you in a second. This one, the Maplewood, is actually my grandparents' home that my grandfather did buy a Sears kit, and he did build the house with his own hands. It looks exactly like that. It's still in my family. My aunt lives there now. They're all pretty much the same. The layouts are almost identical. Some people, that my grandpa in particular was very crafty, very handy, so he was able to alter his a little bit. But essentially, like, you can still find these homes all over. And so my aunt now lives in the Maplewood, but my grandfather did build it with his own hands. This is the one that Turtle wants, that she and her mom were looking at, and it was the Bellwood. And I think it's kind of cool because in the Sears and Roebuck catalog, they're right next to each other. So this was Turtle's dream house, the Bellwood, and this is my grandparents' home, or a version of it that you can see, the Maplewood. So I thought that was kind of cool. All right, moving right along. There we go. Okay. So how was it that my grandfather was able to afford buying this house kit? Well, first of all, he was a farmer. He farmed all the way, like his entire childhood. He was born on a farm. He was raised on a farm. And then that was his livelihood moving forward. Once he married my grandmother, he started his own farm. So he was a farmer. But in addition to that, being as handy as he had carpentry skills. So he was able to build and buy different modes of transportation. So you can see in this picture on the left, that is one of my grandpa's ponies on his farm, and he would be able to actually take people by sleigh around town. Now, my grandfather was born and grew up in a very, very small town in Ohio. Teeny, teeny, tiny. Even now, it's a very small town. Just a couple stoplights. Very small town community. Teeny. Like, if you have not been to a very small town, I don't think most of you could really comprehend what it's like, but very behind the times in many ways, but especially then, automobiles existed, but hardly anybody had them. So they used these, the sleigh, and also over here on the right, that's a picture of my mom and her sisters in the Surrey in a parade. So this one was taken much after the Great Depression, but my grandfather stayed popular amongst the community members, and he would do parades to show off his things. He also had, this one's a little more sad, but he also ran the hearse for funerals. So he had a horse-drawn hearse. It's beautiful. All of these things, the sleigh, the Surrey, and the hearse, the horse-drawn hearse, are all still in a museum in Ohio with their history and with my grandpa's name on them. So that's kind of neat. And actually, when my grandfather died, we did his entire funeral with his own horse-drawn hearse. We did get horses, some draft horses, to pull it. And so he was actually taken to his gravesite in that hearse. So it was really special, really kind of beautiful. But that was another way that he helped support his family. And here is a picture, actually two pictures of my grandfather. The one on the left is his cider mill. Again, he was a farmer, so he had some apple trees, and he would make apple cider. And he built the mill, he built everything around it and made the whole operation, and then he would sell it. And then on the right is another picture. My mom's not in this one, it's her sister's, but that's my grandfather at the head of the horse, again with one of his surreys or trailers, whatever you want to call them. I don't know all the proper terms. I know most of them. Technically, I can't remember the name for that one. Anyway, so those are most of the things I wanted to cover. But when I was talking to my mom and asking her exactly what it was my grandpa put in his coffee soup, she threw in a couple more tidbits. So I'm going to read to you what she said. So she told me, coffee soup is stale crackers or dry bread with sugar, coffee, and milk. My dad, my grandpa, stretched coffee by grinding chicory roots and adding it to the coffee. My mother, so my grandma, was considered to be rich because she got one new dress a year for starting school and a new winter coat every 2 years, even though she was the third girl and wore hand-me-downs at home. Grandpa grew potatoes, and family ate potatoes every day during the Depression. Auntie, my aunt, and Grandpa Reddy were considered to be rich in the Depression because they had 2 spreads on their bread. They had lard and homemade jam. Yes, lard was used as spread to eat on bread, and onions were added in season. So they didn't have butter, even though my aunt and my grandpa were considered to be rich. They didn't typically have butter, so you would use animal fat or lard instead. And if you had that lard plus a homemade jam, that was rich. So maybe kind of put some things in perspective for us, how things were and how things are now. Help us maybe appreciate a little bit. All right. Well, that's it for now. I hope that kind of gave you some information as far as the times and the things that were happening when Turtle's story takes place. All right. Happy reading, guys.